Good morning again. My name is Gwyneth Cortez Sinigaglia, Procurement Manager of the Procurement Division for the Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Recovery and Mitigation Programs. In this pre-proposal meeting, we are going to discuss the request for proposals, environmental consulting services, CDBG-DRMIT-RFP-2022-16. I would like to introduce the Puerto Rico Department of Housing personnel. Along with me is Catherine Vidal, Technical Specialist from the Procurement Division, Dalmari Martinez Castro, Technical Specialist, Juan Carlos Perez Bofil, Director of Disaster Recovery, Angel Lopez Guzman, Permits and Environmental Compliance Specialist, and Carolina Fernandez Acosta, from the Federal Compliance and Subrecipient Management Division. Any questions submitted in this meeting will be answered in writing and published via addendum, and any information provided in this meeting does not change the terms and conditions established in the request for proposal instructions. The meeting will be recorded and available in our CDBG YouTube channel. All procurement processes shall be conducted in accordance with the terms and conditions established in the procurement manual for the CDBG-DR program to guarantee full and open competition and fair treatment of all persons or entities involved in each procurement process. The procurement manual is available at your CDBG website and made an integral part of this RFP. Now, we have a presentation from the Environmental Division for an explanation of the scope of services. Angel, you can share the presentation, please?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Please let me know if you can see it in your screen. Okay. So hi everyone. As Gwyneth have said, my name is Angel Lopez. I'm part of the Environmental Compliance and Permits Division for the CDBG-DR program. So as part of this process, we're looking for environmental companies, high qualified environmental companies for doing the requirements and compliance requirement of HUD in order to meet our goals and environmental compliance requirements. As part of the disaster recovery efforts we're been doing since 2018. Up now, we have two main programs. As part of the recovery, we have the disaster recovery program and the mitigation section. So as part of the disaster recovery, we address unmet needs related to the major disaster declarations and our means to provide long-term recovery alternatives for the territory. And all funded activities under CDBG-DR must meet a national objective and demonstrate a tie to the storm. And mitigation section is mainly based on address mitigation needs by improving the built environment in order to mitigate hazardous threats. So it doesn't have to be strictly related to the disaster recovery efforts. We wanted to implement strategic and transformative and high impact projects that will strengthen the island resilience to future disasters by reducing risk attributable to natural disaster, addressing respective property laws, and improving critical infrastructure. So the environmental consulting services we are looking for CDBG-DR and CDBG-MIT funded activities will include those tied to goods, as I already have said, to goods, construction, and non-construction services, including any required materials or associated costs and services are required by the HUD. It is required to access the CDBG-DR and MIT website to become familiarized with the available documentation for the program. PRDOH, as Puerto Rico Department of Housing, aims to select one or more firms to provide environmental services at the discretion of and needs of the PRDOH and in the best interest of the CDBG-DR and MIT programs implementation. And it is important that contracts will be signed with an initial performance period of 3 years, with up to 2 additional annual extensions at PRDOH choice and necessities, for a total of maximum potential performance period of 5 years. So we're looking for environmental companies that have to be familiarized with the environmental requirements of HUD, including environmental reviews. The firms most conduct environmental reviews for CDBG funded activities in compliance with the requirements set forward in 24 CFR 58 for activities conforming to various levels of environmental review determinations, better said, LORDs, including but not limited to exempt activities, categorical exclusions not subject to 58.5, categorical exclusions subject to 58.5, environmental assessment, and in the higher level, we're looking for companies that may be qualified to develop and perform environmental impact statements. So those companies must prepare complete environmental review record, 8-step decision-making processes if needed, and be available for consultations, including SHIPA consultation or consultation to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or any other regulatory agency required as part of the compliance with 24 CFR 58. And the companies may also be required for activities where environmental clearance must be obtained through a third environmental review process and perform environmental regulations whenever the scope of activities under a completed environmental review changes. They also may be available to provide additional specialized services including land surveys, environmental studies, geotechnical studies, hazardous material studies, and development of abatement plans. It could include lead and asbestos abatement plans, environmental hydrological studies, and other required studies as part of the compliance of the HUD policies. So environmental consulting services cannot be, strictly maintaining all of the requirements in this RFP. And so companies could be available to adopt the environmental review record of other agencies. There are some staff requirements included in the in these documents. So all of the staff must be highly qualified, beginning with the senior environmental specialist, and in the lower level, environmental technicians. All of them must be high qualified. Other professionals who include a GIS specialist, architectural historians, archaeologists, and lead-based paint inspector or assessors, or ACM inspectors. So if you have any other or further questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And in the meantime, at the process there, as Winnet said, there is a specific time designated to answer questions, not right now, but it could be answered. And I mean, you could write your questions, and there may be answered in the meantime. Thank you. I don't know if one of our team members wanted to add anything else.
Not at this point. Thank you, Angel. As was stated previously, any questions can be made at this point in the chat. Nevertheless, all questions will be answered through an addenda to this process. So we will not be addressing any questions at this point. Aside from that, thank you all for your participation, and we expect to see proposals from you all in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. We thank very much the Environmental Division for that important information. Now I will be sharing we will continue with our procurement process, and I will be sharing our procurement presentation. The RFP documents acquisition. For the RFP documents are already available for download at the CDBG-DR website as presented on screen. The prospective important dates for this RFP are the following: submission or questions and requests for clarification on or before January 17th. Responses to questions and requests clarifications will be posted on January 20th. Proposal due dates, electronic submission only, will be from February 22nd at 9:30 a.m. up to February 24th at 4:30 p.m. Submission and inquiries and addenda. Responses to all proposers' questions will be answered by addenda and will be posted on the CDBG-DR website. These must be submitted using attachment 3 on or before January 17th. All documents related to this acquisition process, including the addendas issued by the Puerto Rico Department of Housing, are and will be available for download at our website. All proposers are responsible to monitor the CDBG-DR website for any issued addenda in this RFP. Proposal, electronic submission. Proposals will only be accepted electronically. Proposals submitted after the prescribed deadline will not be allowed. The Department of Housing will neither require nor accept physical proposal submissions. If a proposal is submitted on paper and electronically, only the electronic submission will be considered for evaluation. Proposers will receive access to submit proposals after completing the registration process through the CDBG-DR website. Once the scheduled submission period begins, a link will enable access to the registration form. Please complete all requested fields in the form. Proposals must be submitted within the closing date and time scheduled. Access to upload the proposals will begin 3 business days before the closing schedule, date, and time. Now I will leave you with my coworker, Dalmari Martinez.
The evaluation committee will evaluate responsive proposal according to the following criteria listed in order of importance. 1. Professional qualification and experience of the proposer to successfully perform the service required in this RFP, as evidenced by the successful implementation of similar programs in large complex public organizations, preferably state, government, and municipalities. 2. Professional qualification and special experience of the proposed key personnel has evidenced by relevant experience to the roles proposed. 3. Quality of the proposed approach and its relevance to the service described in this RFP, including implementation schedule and understanding of the Department of Housing goals. 4. Capacity of the key personnel and the ability to commit adequate time to effectively perform the services in the role assigned within the required time frame. 5. Financial stability of the proposer and its capacity to effectively perform the services. 6. Proposer registry and participation in the Section 3 and MWBE. 7. Reasonable overall price, allocation of effort, and overall value offered. Proposer and first-tier subcontractor both must be registered in the system for our management, also known as SAM, at the time of proposal submission, or initiate the registration process right after the proposal submission. For more information, please visit the SAM website as presented in the slide. There is no fee to create, renew, or update your registration. Awards will only be issued to entities that are cleared and not ineligible for award of a contract due to suspension, debarment, or had imposed limit denial of participations. Now, we will leave you with Carolina Fernandez from the Federal Compliance Division to explain the federal compliance requirements.
Can you see the presentation?
Requirements. This presentation is prepared in English. However, should anyone need this presentation in Spanish, you can request using the protocols for this RFP. I am representing the Department of Housing Federal Compliance team, led by Maria del Carmen Figueroa. Today, we will discuss as part of our agenda an overview of compliance roles and responsibilities. We will also cover some tools that are available online. We will also talk about documenting efforts, taking advantage of training that's made available, and reporting requirements, as well as frequently asked questions. In this presentation, we will be discussing Section 3 training, hiring, and contracting opportunities, minority and women-owned business participation, and fair housing and equal opportunity. Contractors or subrecipients using CDBG-DR or CDBG-MIT funding have certain roles and responsibilities. These include assigning staff who will attend the day-to-day implementation of federal compliance requirements, attending trainings and workshops, using tools and templates, executing the activities, and completing documentation that's required. You can also participate in Department of Housing sponsored technical assistance sessions. You must complete quarterly reporting and comply with the reporting requirements. The procurement package contains sections that speak to the applicability and the requirements for MWBE. Within those sections, you will find helpful links to online resources that are made available, such as the policy guide. Procurement packages also contain language for Section 3 under 24 CFR 75. Although for this particular procurement, the contractor awarded will not need to comply with Section 3. However, you may find the information useful if you are seeking to prove Section 3 status to earn potential bonus points. Let's talk about Section 3. Section 3 is a federal requirement from the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. This requirement states that we should provide to the greatest extent feasible job training, employment, contracting, and other economic opportunities generated by this HUD financial assistance to be directed to low and very low income persons and businesses. The Department of Housing makes available a Section 3 policy guide on their website, both in English and in Spanish. Contractors must read and implement activities as applicable and necessary. They also are responsible for their subcontractors assuring that benchmarks are met. For Section 3 projects, 24 CFR 75 has established the following benchmarks. 25% of the total labor hours for a project should be work hours of Section 3 workers. And from that 25%, 5% of the total labor hours should be work hours of targeted Section 3 workers. Let's talk about the definition of a Section 3 business. A Section 3 business refers to a business concern meeting at least one of the following criteria, which is documented within the last 6 months. The business is at least 51% owned and controlled by low or very low income persons. It could also be a business that has at least 51% ownership and controlled by a public housing resident or residents who currently live in Section 8 assisted housing. It could also be a business that has over 75% of the labor hours performed for that business over the prior 3-month period by Section 3 workers. In this slide, we're going to look at the definition of a Section 3 worker. A Section 3 worker can be any worker who fits or, when hired within the last 5 years, fit at least one of the following categories. The worker's income for the previous or annualized calendar year is below the income limit established by HUD. It could also be a worker who is employed by a Section 3 business concern. Or the worker is a youth build participant. Now let's talk about what a targeted Section 3 worker is. A Section 3 targeted worker for community development financial assistance projects is a person who is employed by a Section 3 business. It could also be a person who currently fits or when hired fit at least one of the following categories as documented within the past 5 years. Someone living within the service area or the neighborhood of the project as defined in 24 CFR 75.5 or a youth build participant. The neighborhood or service area for a targeted Section 3 worker is that in which you can find at least 5,000 persons within a 1-mile radius of the project. If there are less than 5,000 persons within that 1-mile radius, you can expand that radius until you have 5,000 persons around the Section 3 covered project site. Each year, HUD releases new income limits. These income limits typically come out around April. The latest income limits for 2022 are made available on the slide. The Department of Housing has created various forms for helping maintain compliance. There is a Section 3 plan that can be used by contractors or subrecipients. There are also Section 3 self-certification forms. And finally, there is a form to help you document your efforts. Let's take a closer look at your Section 3 plan. This document helps you identify new hiring needs, subcontracting needs. It helps you plan your outreach efforts and assists your coordinators in identifying the day-to-day activities. It helps you define compliant procedures, and it helps you understand your reporting requirements. You can use the link on the slide to visit the website and download a Section 3 plan template. In this slide, we want to focus on the Section 3 self-certification forms. These useful tools help you uncover if workers or subcontracting businesses meet the income thresholds required. HUD offers also a business registry. This registry allows you to register yourself as a Section 3 business. The registry also has a tool that helps serve folks looking for Section 3 business databases. We will now turn our attention to minority and women-owned business compliance. There are various regulations that call for the inclusion of minorities and women business enterprises. 2 CFR 200.321, as well as Executive Orders 11625, 12138, and 12432 establish the participation of MWBE firms, which seek to ensure that when possible, contracts and other economic opportunities funded in whole or in part with federal housing and community development assistance are directed to minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. The Department of Housing has established an MWBE policy guide. This is available on the website in both English and Spanish. You can access those documents using the link on the slide. Let's look at what a minority business enterprise is. An MBE is defined as a business which is at least 51% owned, operated, and controlled on a daily basis by one or more American citizens of the following ethnic minority and/or gender and/or military veteran classifications: African American, Asian American, Hispanic American, Native American, Hasidic Jew, persons with disabilities, and other individuals who can prove social and economic disadvantage. Women business enterprises, or WBEs, are businesses that are at least 51% owned and controlled by one or more women. The owners must be U.S. citizens or legal resident aliens whose business formation and principal place of business are here in the U.S. or its territories, and whose management and daily operation is controlled by women. The MWBE policy guide will identify that there are goals which apply to professional services, purchasing supplies, and construction contracting. There is a total of 20% minimum participation goal. This 20% is comprised of 10% for women-owned businesses and 10% for minority-owned businesses. Contractors are expected to perform good faith efforts for contracting, subcontracting, and purchasing opportunities of $10,000 or more during the life of the contract. The Department of Housing has also created various forms for helping maintain compliance with MWBE. One of those is the MWBE Utilization Plan. This document template allows contractors or subrecipients to identify how they plan on being in compliance with these contracting goals. There is also a waiver form. This document allows contractors or subrecipients to identify if they meet the requirements to waive their goals for MWBE. Let's look at the MWBE Utilization Plan. This tool helps you compile data for your subcontracting. It helps you identify what needs you may have. It helps hold discussions on creating supplier and contractor listings, and it provides awareness of meeting the goal for the contract and tracking. You can use the link on the slide to go to the website and download the plan template. Let's review how you should complete your MWBE utilization plan. The Department of Housing Utilization Plan template can be used throughout the life cycle of your contract. Completing the plan is pretty easy. You should read the general instructions in row 3 and complete sections A, B, and F from the document. Complete the information requested in the yellow cells. When we talk about certified minority or women-owned businesses, we are referring to those who have filed applications with federal entities such as SBA and others that you see here on the slide. Businesses who are certified can provide proof of completing an application process to be officially recognized as a certified minority or women-owned business. If you are registered as an MWBE, you should provide your valid certificate or other evidence in response to this RFP. In this section, we will be discussing how to complete your efforts and quarterly reporting. In order for you to report your efforts, the Department of Housing provides a tool. This tool helps you document and identify how often you are seeking interactions with Section 3 businesses and MWBE businesses. The quarterly reporting form allows for you to share and report your data with the Department of Housing. This allows the agency to fulfill oversight responsibilities and monitor the progress throughout the year. The Department of Housing's quarterly reporting form allows for the user to capture multiple compliance areas all in one Excel form. Section 3 data is collected. MWBE data is collected as well. FHEO information is also documented within the report. And finally, for those who have construction projects, there is a report for Davis-Bacon Unfound Workers Efforts Reporting. Awarded contractors will be responsible for reporting 4 times a year, on April 5th, July 5th, October 5th, and January 5th. This ensures that you are meeting benchmarks and documenting your efforts. The quarterly reporting template is also available on the Department of Housing website. Let's briefly discuss FHEO. Your RFP package will also contain a model contract which outlines fair housing and equal opportunity areas of compliance. Contractors are responsible for ensuring compliance with federal civil rights and fair housing through their contractors, subcontractors, and so forth, ensuring that all necessary efforts are being made. The Fair Housing Act and Sections 109 and 504 prohibit discrimination against the following protected classes of people: race, color, national origin, religion, sex, age, familial status, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation. The Fair Housing Act is part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There are many executive orders, laws, and statutes that govern the non-discrimination of protected classes to ensure equal opportunity for individuals in accessing federally funded programs. Equal opportunity is afforded to protected classes through a number of these federal laws and executive orders. The Department of Housing has published policy documents attending FHEO as well as Language Access Plan. These policies must be implemented by contractors and subrecipients. They are publicly available online in both English and Spanish. You are encouraged to click on the links and access the resources available. As a recipient of HUD financial assistance, the Department of Housing must ensure that all programs affirmatively further access to fair housing and that the programs provide equal opportunity for participation and employment. Reasonable accommodations are changes made to policies, practices, services, and structures, or modifications to afford equal opportunity to individuals with disabilities. The costs associated with providing reasonable accommodations and modifications are to be incurred by programs receiving federal funding. HUD contemplates these additional costs as necessary to ensure that the programs and activities it funds do not discriminate against people with disabilities. The slide contains a link for you to access the reasonable accommodation page on the Department of Housing website. Limited English proficiency refers to a person's limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English. Due to Puerto Rico's high Spanish-speaking population, all entities and contractors using the CDBG-DR funding must seek to ensure that both a person's limited ability to read, write, speak, or understand English or Spanish will not place them at a disadvantage in the participation of programs. Let's briefly discuss some common, frequently asked questions. Can a business be both Section 3 and MWBE? The answer is yes. A business or a contractor can be both because these compliance areas are actually separate. Section 3 identifies the level of incomes to determine the status. MWBE uses race and gender information to qualify a business. If I am not planning on subcontracting, do I still need to complete documents? The answer is yes. You should still submit your MWBE utilization plan, the documentation of efforts template, and your quarterly reports. If Section 3 doesn't apply to my contract, do I still have to complete the quarterly report? The answer is yes. You will have to complete the MWBE portion of the report and the portion of the report that attends to FHEO. If I'm either an MBE or WBE, do I fulfill the total goals? You may have safe harbor for one of the goals for MWBE participation of 10%, but you will still have an additional 10% goal to show good faith efforts for any subcontracting or purchasing you perform with the CDBG-DR and CDBG-MIT funding. What happens if I don't fulfill the goals before the end of my contract? All awarded contractors should perform and document their efforts. The Department of Housing has developed templates discussed in this presentation that help you complete the exercise. You can submit a waiver before the end of your contract for approval. This waiver request should be submitted with the efforts and justification as appropriate. Thank you for attending today's training. We hope you found the material helpful. Please remember to direct all your questions through the established protocols for this procurement. Thank you to the procurement team for allowing us to present this material. I will stop sharing the presentation so you can continue with the session.
Thank you, Federal Compliance, for the presentation. And thank you all for the participation. Please remember, all questions must be submitted via email. Have a good day. Thank you.